моих братьев благослови наши руки. Мы в поисках больших денег, мы в деле круглые сутки. Благослови
Pimped Out Radio Show, man, they everywhere.
благослови моих братьев. Благослови моих братьев, благослови наши руки. Мы в поисках больших денег, мы в деле круглые сутки. Благослови моих братьев. Благослови моих братьев. Я скрутил себе потолще, я выдыхаю
Best jam I have ever eaten.
Oh, wow.
I have that as a testimonial.
И не играй со мной свою роль. Со мной молодые братья. Мы возьмем котлеты наличных себе на завтрак. Сегодня-завтра, неважно как я. You, эй, yeah. Благослови моих братьев, благослови наши руки, мы в поисках больших.
All right, y'all, we are tuned in for another episode of Baked Out Radio Show. I am your host, Andreas, and I have a lovely guest coming via Zoom, Miss Kerry-Ann Powell, who is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. Thank you, ma'am, for coming on.
Hey, Andreas, how you doing? It's good to be here.
You know, what is today? Today's Thursday.
I know the feeling. I've been saying that all week. What's today?
You know, that's how it is as an entrepreneur. Hey, what's today? I don't know. You know, every day is a work day, pretty much.
Every day's a work day. The life of the entrepreneur.
So I was sitting there reading through your bio. Very impressive. I love the fact that you raised $120 million to build a Martin Luther King Jr. memorial.
Yes. Have you been to the one in Washington?
Okay, so we passed through Washington. We took a family trip one time. We passed through saw the White House. We didn't go in there or anything like that. We just,
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, the next time you have a chance to take some time off with your family, make a trip to the nation's capital.
I also know that they opened up the African American Museum there.
Yes, it's fantastic, quite amazing. You got to give yourself a lot of time to go through it because literally, it's like the bottom couple floors. It took me like 4 hours, so it's a thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an excellent museum.
That's what's up. So let's see. You have a 20-year experience as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
So what got you? Okay, so how do you transfer those skills over to being an entrepreneur? Let's dive into that real quick.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So my business, we do strategy development and consulting for small and medium-sized companies. And in my whole career, that's all I've really been doing is primarily developing strong strategies, finding a way to execute them and executing them well. Yeah. So when I was finished building the Martin Luther King Memorial, they asked me to stay on board to lead the transition into an education foundation. So that's what there is right now. It's an education foundation. There's a lot of educational stuff connected to the memorial. And once that was done, obviously I had opportunities to do a lot of different things, continue to go back to fundraising, blah, blah, blah. But what I realized, so this business actually of various iterations of what it eventually became. But, I spent a lot of time, working with boards of directors of large NGOs around the country and the world around strategy development for their fundraising plans. And as I was doing this, I realized that what really geeked me out was really helping people develop strong strategies and execution plans. Okay, because let me tell you what, 67% of companies, not just small businesses, but 67% of companies and organizations, they have a strategy and it's really fantastic, but they fail to execute it because of, they don't have a good execution process. So it's not just creating strategy, it's also how you're going to execute. So that's how I evolved into running my business. I had 20 years of strategy development and, leading strong teams and leading big projects, and eventually moved to helping others to do the same.
So why I like dive into the small business and medium-sized businesses? Because one, um, I have marketing company that I started a couple of years ago. One, because
Yeah,
of the platform. So I've had this platform since 2016.
yeah,
But then as I kept talking, I'm talking about real small businesses. They're not doing no more than maybe about 100,000, 200,000 if they're trying to get to that.
yeah.
Overlooked market. But I know why it's overlooked because of the limited resources. So why,
Yes.
apply your talents to those type of businesses?
Well, so obviously the category of small and medium-sized companies, to be
Mhm.
honest, is it's probably not fair because
Mhm.
it's pretty wide,
Yeah, it is.
wide berth. But I would say, some of the companies that I work with, most of them are probably around 50 employees and below.
Mhm.
And but so if for folks to be able to really get value from the firm, from my firm, they really do need to have already created some amount of infrastructure,
Mhm.
not sort of startups, stage, but they've done some things that allows for them to be able to know what they don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes people, they start a business and they're all googly eyes and they're excited, and they kind of, they go to somebody's workshop and they kind of do a thing and they're on their way. But then there's this point where you realize I've done all they can do, and I'm realizing I'm experiencing chaos in the business. And usually these chaotic things show up when either because of cash flow,
Mhm.
or they can't scale, or they can't build a team very well, or the owner is wearing too many hats and they just feel like if they
Mhm.
walk in from the business, it's going to implode. But one of the reasons why I really think it's important to work with small and medium-sized companies. So I say that just to sort of give a sense of, when people think small, they think of one person doing a thing, right? But
Yeah.
there are small businesses that are smaller teams. Now, the reason why I focus on small and medium-sized, but one, because I really think the role, like when you start thinking about local communities, okay, um, who are the people, who are the businesses that are supporting the tax code, right? Who are the folks that are really putting in the money to build the infrastructure of those communities? They are small and medium-sized companies. Who support in Little League? Small and medium-sized companies. 2/3 of people in the United States work for a small and medium-sized company. In other parts of the world, it's actually a higher number. When you start looking at, so it's the role that small and medium-sized companies play in our local communities, in our economy. When you start thinking about economic growth in our nation, our GDP, where is that going to come from? It's going to come from a small and medium-sized company, because they're the ones that can increase the gap between what already is in terms of goods and services versus going higher. So I'm passionate about helping owners who are about building companies that they want to scale, that they want to build, that want to last and have legacy. Not like a side hustle, which I'm not knocking on the side hustle, but that's not kind of how I don't really like to work with those type of companies. I'm working with companies who are trying to build something
Mhm.
that can last,
Mhm.
and can last in a way that impacts their local communities and impacts our GDP, and frankly, the GDP of the world. I mean, the growth of the world economically.
So what are you seeing as far as a common thread? So when you go into these businesses and like you said, 50 employees or more, I imagine like, they're doing like, 10 million annually or something like that. And just to
Yeah,
be
yeah, somewhere, yeah, within the range.
get over those humps. What are you saying are like the common factors that they're all pretty much, are falling into that category?
Well, so some of the challenges that I've seen with small and medium-sized companies is that the owners are still working in the company.
Mm.
So depending upon, so of course I've got companies whose employees are, they have 5 employees. Okay. So it's just anywhere from 5 to 50, anywhere. It's a big range, but
Mhm.
so you've got, but most of the companies that I work with, the owner is still working in the company,
Mhm.
and different in a different role. Obviously, folks that are early days, they're still like being an individual contributor in the company. So we're trying to help them stop working in the business. But so let's say but they are somehow working in the business. So the ethos of the company, the values, the strategic direction of the company is still dependent upon the vision of the owner.
Mhm.
Even if the owner has transitioned into sort of being a board member, a board of director, chairman of the board, and they have a CEO, it's still very much connected to the vision of the owner, which means that oftentimes there's a need to translate that vision and have it permeated throughout the company.
Mhm.
And making sure that, even if someone's listening to this and they're like, well, hey, I only got like 5 employees, we all talk all day, we all know the values. The thing is, when you start scaling and scaling big, you sometimes lose sight of those values. You sometimes lose sight of the things that make your company a thing.
Mhm.
And it waters things down. And you've seen this, I'm sure you know this, Andreas. You see a company that was like the best at the thing, and then they started growing, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't even really like the brand anymore. What you really want to do is perpetually infuse into the company the values, the mission, what the true purpose is. So in our company, what we do is we're in the business of helping businesses thrive. That's what we do. It's distilled and simple. It's not like a big, we've got a whole, mission statement, blah, 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 but that's what it is. If you can stick with that and get that soaked into everyone in the organization, and for you, the owner, to remember that, so that you don't get distracted when other things pop up, other, what do they call them? Squirrels that, silver squirrels, you're like, oh, I want to do that. You know what I mean? So it keeps you focused. The other real thing is developing teams in a way that it's not, you're not hiring based on personality, you're hiring based on what you need in the company. So what happens is, early days in a small business, they're like, oh, cousin Susie knows how to do social media, so we're going to bring cousin Susie in on here, and Uncle so-and-so is good. And that's fantastic at the beginning days, because right at those points, you're just trying to, but the reality is, at some point real early in the business, one has to start thinking about, okay, based on the vision I have for the company, what does the org chart look like? Build the org chart early days, even if you don't have, even if you're the only one in the org chart, even if your name is in there. But you want to make sure that you are building an org chart that is based on what the needs of the company is, the type of personality that needs to be in that position, the what kind of qualifications the role needs to have, what does it actually take to do that job, and begin to hire from the bottom up. So, basically putting yourself and cousin Susie out of a job so that you can continue to build up. And so that's really, I think, one of the main problems that happens is either they're not building their team very well, they're doing it hodgepodgey, or they don't have a really clear vision of how they're going to build a team, who they need, what qualifications they need, and don't just put people in there because you know them.
So how receptive are they when your business approaches, or however that interaction is? Because I'm sure you do like a business assessment where you'll go in,
Yes.
learn
Yeah.
about, get all this great information and present it in this particular, documented stuff. I'm like, hey, you need work on blah, blah, blah. Because, sometimes, someone built a business, they have 5 employees. So let's say they're doing $5 million annual or whatever. So they know that they built something from the ground up, and that has value, that experience. But then, like you said, when you're trying to scale, you have to look at things differently. You have to come up with a new mentality and mindset of how you go forward. How are they receptive to that information?
Well, you know what, Andreas? People respond. Human nature is an interesting thing, right?
Uh-huh.
People respond to, like, if they have a pain, people are going to respond more to pain than to pleasure.
Mhm.
So normally, if they come to me, there is a serious pain point. There's something that's really causing pain, not just pain in the business, but pain to the owner, the
Mhm.
founder, or the leaders in the company.
Mhm.
And so they're way more receptive when you have pain happening. And I'm like, okay, here's what I see happening, because they realize they can't do it on their own.
Mhm.
And so they're way more receptive. That's why I'm always able to test to see, well, whether or not do we want to work with this company or not, whether or not they're able to, be able to be coached. Are they coachable? Can they receive what we're saying? but to your point, people have egos, people are human, and that's a reality. But my whole point is you can continue doing things the way that you're doing, wasting money and having and losing cash. Because let me tell you, those four things I mentioned, they actually are also the four things of chaos. They're also the number one reasons, the top four reasons why businesses fail, like go out of business. So this is not something where you were like, oh, well, I've been dealing with this forever. I'll be okay to deal with it. No, you're going to lose your business if you continue to let it go that way. And I think that's the most important thing for people to understand is that when you start looking at, we all know the statistics, okay? Over a 10-year period, only 30% of businesses will survive over a 10-year period. That's, 70% failure rate. So you have a responsibility, not just to yourself and to your family, to your employees and their families, to your customers, as well as all the other stakeholders that this business gains value to, for you to be able to do what you need to do to make sure the business doesn't fail. And so if you got an ego problem, that's cool. You can go ahead and do what you need to do. And then let's get to work.
Yeah. So, how old is your business?
We've been around since 2014.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're about to hit that 10-year mark, which is great. So when you first got out there, was this your first business venture as far as
Yeah. Well, yes, full time and such. So I, it had a couple of things like when I was doing what I was, when I was fundraising for the memorial, as well as when I was an attorney and lobbyist, I did have a business where I was doing retreats, but that was doing retreats for other women in leadership, and that was not, I sort of did it as a side hustle, if you call it, but it was a way that I was able to do these events as a way to, bring my gifts to the world, but have an entity that was funneling the money through. So that was not really a full-time thing. However, when I went full-time into this business, it was my first foray into full-time running the business. And it's no joke, Andreas. It will definitely, I always talk about running a business as it's a really great tool to sort of see what you're made of. Right.
tested.
You're like, oh, I thought I was tough, but okay. Which goes back to the importance of having a strong mindset and really creating those systems and processes in place that can run your business well, but also that run you well. Okay. Because if you don't have a way to buttress up your mindset, I don't know, it's difficult to run a business, even though you know all the strategy and techniques. When you start getting to that point when you're looking at the cash flow in the business and you're like, how am I going to pay my payroll? Yeah, it gets you, it can hit you.
Yeah, the payroll, oh my God, it eats up so much. How did you pick a name?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So the Battle of Trafalgar. It's a battle between the British and Spain and Italy. And it kind of has this sort of story around being sort of like an underdog and coming up, succeeding above all kind of thing. And so I really love that sort of those types of stories. And when I was trying to decide what if I was going to stay in the business, so the original iteration of my business was primarily working with large NGOs doing strategy. And then as I was moving this forward, I took some time. And I said, you know what, I need to assess if I really want to continue. The business was growing in that direction. I was bringing on a team, but I just felt like, my days of fundraising per se were behind me, and I was no longer excited about the way the business was the direction. And I saw myself building this thing that I didn't really want. I don't know if anyone's listening. Sometimes you start building a business you think you want, and then you realize, wait a minute, this is not what I want. So I took some time to pause and moved to Europe. And I was in London, and they have the big square, Trafalgar Square, right in the middle of the central London. And I was standing there at night, and they have these like lions that are kind of like right there. And it was at the same time that I was sort of processing, okay, what direction do I want to take the business, and how do I want to reinvent it so that it makes sense for me at the stage of life that I was at that time. And I was like, Trafalgar Square. And it finally came to me in that time when I was standing in the square that I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to really serve small business owners more exclusively and really start helping. And then as opposed to sort of focusing only on large NGOs. And that was really, I was in that square and I loved this. I love sort of the story of the Battle of Trafalgar. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to name my business this. So it was really more, I don't know, the word is a bit touchy-feely, but in the same sense, it is inspiring for me. So I went for it.
So in the early days of Trafalgar, did I say it correctly?
Yeah, Trafalgar Strategies, yes.
Strategies. When you was like, getting it off the ground, things of that nature.
Yeah.
When did you have your first moment? Because applying strategies, and working with bigger companies and being under someone else's payroll is a little different than when you're responsible for bringing in that
Oh yeah, it is, Andreas.
money. So when did you have that pivotal moment? It was like, okay, yeah, I can really do this, and where that confidence sort in? Was it like a big contract that you had landed, or
Yeah, well, okay, this is again, I really I like try to keep it real for people because I think sometimes people have this vision of how things are going to be, and when it doesn't line up that way, they kind of feel a bit of a way. It was a when I decided to go full-time into the business, that was a spiritual moment for me. I'm a Christian and I've been praying about it, but I'm also very, I wouldn't say I'm logical per se, but I did at that point want to have some things in place before I went full-time into the business. And I had been home because I was sick. I had a health issue, so I was at home by myself. Well, not by myself, but for a long period of time, about 2-3 weeks. And I'd had family coming in, checking in on me, cooking me meals, blah blah blah. And then there was like a couple days where I was going to be home by myself without anyone coming. So like I had my brother was going to be coming one day. So it was like 2-3 days where I was at in my condo. And I was like, I think I need to go. Like I felt sort of the tingling, in my mind, or for me, it was, conversation with God, but however one communicates, that's it. And I was like, yeah, so I'm not ready for that. Like, I kind of put on like all the things that needed to happen before I did that. And when I, and like, how much money I needed to have and all that kind of stuff. And when I extrapolated it out, I was like, it was going to be till like, another year before I did that. And I was perfectly fine with that, to be honest. Because I could have, stretched out the whole thing I was doing on my job for a bit. Anyway, but there was a moment, a friend of mine came to my home and she was just visiting with me, and we're just, chit-chatting and, talking about, not gossiping, but just catching up on what's going on with all of our friends and such. So we just had this whole like 30 minutes where we were just sort of doing light talk and stuff. She was just keeping me company. And then she said, Kerry-Ann, there's this song that they played at my church the other day that really has been staying with me. And I just want to share the song with you. And I said, okay, I had not told anyone that I was thinking about going full-time into the business. So, and she plays that song, Oceans by Hillsong. I don't know if you're in the Christian faith, but there's a song called Oceans. It was very, very popular back then, and it's just talking about walking on the water and having the faith to walk on the water with God. And when she played that song, and it had it's like an extended version, like the concert version when it's like 7 minutes long, and I'm listening to that song. And at that moment in time, it was like, that was the moment when I knew that this was a message for me that I'm going to do this. I had been having this conversation with God for several days, and I was like, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to do it a year from now. And at that moment, it was like, I am doing this and it's going to be successful. Like, I had that moment where I was confident about it. It wasn't a question. So as soon as the song was finished, I looked at her and I said, I'm going into business. I'm going into business full time. And she's like, what? I said, I'm going into business full time. And she's like, yeah, I guess you are. And she had no like doubts. Are you sure? Blah, blah, blah. Because she was in the same space, the same energy field that I was, and she was getting it. She was hearing it too. And so that was one moment. And there were many, 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 many moments of signs where I was, well, okay, how are we going to do this? We're going to do the money part, and how are we going to, do this? And there are moments, it's those incremental moments where something happens and I'm sure, and you're reminded that this is a good decision. It's not like one big thing like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And it's great, because to be honest with you, my first big contract, Andreas, and I tell this story a lot when I talk about how to scale and grow your business. My first big contract, which I thought was cool, I got, it was like a year after going full-time in the business. And I remember thinking it was time for me to scale, because I had gotten a couple really, I was feeling myself because I had gotten some good contracts. I was like, I want a big one because I want to scale. At that time, I didn't know what scale and growth was. Okay. So I was like, I want to scale. So I signed this big contract with this organization. I was ready to go. And it was the worst year of my entire life. I honestly woke up every night pulling my hair out, trying to figure out how we're going to be able to hit the contract, my team was hating me. I was hating myself. The person who referred me was hating me. I was in such it was a failure of a contract. And it took me a little while to get out of that feeling of, maybe I'm not the kind of company that does scale. Maybe I'm not the kind of company that can, do the thing that build a business that's like, multiples and all that stuff. Maybe I'm going to always be small. And I had to pull myself back up. I mean, I allowed myself to sulk a bit, I must admit, but I had to pull myself back up, reorganize my life and the business, and sort of fix what things that I had made a mess of. And then I began to realize that the reason why this whole thing happened, besides the fact that I'd, been a bit egotistical, but was that because, did you know, 2/3 of businesses that hit the Inc. 500 or the Inc. 5000 list fail within 8 years after hitting that list? So clearly people are not scaling sustainably. They're scaling sexy ways, but not sustainably. They're like, oh, look, 10x this, blah, blah, blah. I'm on Inc. 5000, but they're not scaling sustainably. So for me, there is no real time when I was like, yeah, I got it in the bag. And every day, every single day, I work as if whatever successes I had yesterday didn't exist. I pretend that I'm still scrappy, because I am still scrappy. I'm a small business. I'm growing. So I'm like, I'm still scrappy. I'm still trying to make it work. Because I think when you start like resting on your laurels a bit, that's when the hunger within dies, and then you just stay. And then there's an arc of the stages of business. And what you always want to do is, so like, this is the baby stage, and then this is the death stage. You want to always stay at this stage right here. You don't want to go over you want to stay at prime, as they say. And to stay at prime, you always got to be hungry. You always got to believe that there's a new thing that you need to do. You need to always be innovating, always be optimizing.
That is the first time I've heard that since college. I forgot all about the business stages. And the birth stage, the death stage, and then like hitting it right there, right before climax, because like you said, you start to go over, and then you go downhill from there.
And you don't even know you're going downhill, right? Because it's one of the things the evidence of the fact that you're downhill. If you can see that you're going downhill, I mean, the same thing. All those companies that die, right?
Mhm.
If you see that they're going downhill, it's that means that whatever happened before then
Mhm.
is far behind. I mean, you can look, you can, you've seen stories of companies that have reinvigorated themselves and such like that, but it's real difficult.
Yeah, I think Apple's like one of them.
Well, Apple's like the only one that we all use. We all use that
Downhill.
example.
I think it was like right after they had those that rollout of those color computers and stuff that they had.
Yes, that was when they, yes,
Mhm. And
yes,
then
you know that, right, Andrea?
iPod basically saved them, and then being exclusive with the music with the iTunes and all that or
Yes,
whatever.
right. And then
Hold
it finally went back.
it's finally back. Um, so you have a 9 year company history, right? You started off doing certain jobs as the founder CEO.
Mhm.
How have you transitioned? So what are you doing now with your business or your responsibilities for it that you were doing then, but you're not doing those anymore?
That's a really good question. I think right now, I find myself, I still do work in the business. So that's that, I still do some client fulfillment, and such, even though, obviously, we're actually getting ready to transition that out. But what I what I have noticed the change has been for me as we've been moving forward and evolving is that I am spending a lot more time being able to drive the strategic direction of the company more. And I like sometimes I find myself like I look at the calendar, I'm like, shouldn't I be doing so, like, because when you're working in the business, you're constantly busy, right? Like when you're working the business all the time. As you begin to sort of transition out, you're like, oh, I have more time to do some things. And so I find myself, my time is spent speaking a lot, at conferences and sort of creating the visibility of the company. Obviously, I do a great deal of podcast interviews,
Mhm.
and just always sort of thinking about the strategic direction of the company and being able to make sure the team is really, understanding that and they have the tools they need to be able to do the thing. I was talking, I had a staff meeting this morning, and look, and the thing is, I know what needs to happen, but what a doctor is the worst patient, their worst patient. So I
Yes.
remember like there was like something that was happening in the business, and I normally like to kind of look at it before it goes out or something like that.
Mhm.
And one of my employees today said, "Well, Kerry-Ann, so we've all decided." Him and someone else that works on that particular was like, we're not going to be asking for permission on this.
I love it.
I sat there, I was like, a part of me a little forward was like, well, I know you didn't just tell me that but I was
But
like,
that's what
exactly,
you're in a position for, though, because they're invested in and they have
exactly.
their vision. And like I've told like a lot of different business owners, as you start to bring people into the organization,
Mhm.
they want to feel valued. They want their ideas to be heard. They want to
Yes.
contribute. So, like you said, it's like, the ego thing, we gotta get out our own way and be like,
Yeah.
see where this
Yeah,
thing
no,
goes.
totally. And the thing is, when he said that, it was like, you're kind of like outside of yourself, seeing yourself. I
Mhm,
know this is what I teach. This is what I preach. This is like the gospel for me. But I
mhm,
didn't realize that, I was still
mhm.
hanging on to this thing. And he was like, so we're just not, we're not going, we're not running this by you at all. I was like, okay. It was a growth moment. So, I was talking to someone and they were sort of talking about, I don't know if you have any women in your life, but
Mhm.
there's a show called Outlander that a lot of women really like. It's a historical show. It's originally based out of Scotland, but now the folks they're like time travelers. They've moved to the United States in the 1700s. So right now they're at a point where they're having the Revolutionary War, the beginning stages of a Revolutionary War,
Mhm.
and um and I was looking at the warfare at that time and how the generals and the captains and the lieutenants and the troops sort of interacted. And what I noticed, I'm like, it's so different than warfare today. Okay. But what I noticed was, the generals were not on the battlefield. They were always farther away on some hill looking down so that they could see what's going on and be able to send to the leaders that are on the field, the captains, and say, hey, go left, go right, retreat, do a thing, whatever. And it reminded me of the role that founders and owners need to be playing in their businesses. There are many things that we can delegate out. But the one thing we can't delegate out is the strategic direction of the company. And so if you can sort of imagine yourself, the general, on the hill, you're being able to see, because you have a better vantage point. But if I'm busy doing the thing in the business, then I don't have the time or the capacity or the bandwidth or even the strategic position to be able to see what's happening. And so you asked the question about what am I doing now? It's really more being able to see, okay, strategically, if we want to get to we have big goals, right? We want to grow big. And so for us to get there, what do we really need? What do I need to be doing?
I definitely love that. So is there anything that you haven't touched on that you want to touch on?
Yeah, no. I think you've had some really great questions, Andreas.
See, I've been doing it for like 7 years now, so
I love it. No, I totally love it.
business and everything because I could definitely relate, especially with all the different things that I do.
Yeah.
So for I guess anyone out there is going to watch this because like I am putting the video side out there as well, but the audio will be too. Where can people contact to get in contact? What do people need to go to get in contact with your business if they're at that point to where they need to hire?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website's trafalgarstrategies.co. And if you're trying to figure out, I don't know if you're I have a particular PDF that I created on our website that allows for people to be able to kind of figure out, okay, if I'm having some chaos in the business, what does that look like and why is it showing up? Because my posture is just the four things I mentioned are really just symptoms of chaos. They're not the actual core problems. So you kind of have to first identify what are the core problems. And I think there's 8 core problems. That's what we teach in the company. And so if you are interested in kind of learning more and digging a bit deeper into whether or not assessing your core, your problems and seeing what they might be in your particular business based on the chaos that's showing up, you can download it at nobusinesschaos.com. It's nobusinesschaos.com. And yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn. So, if you're part of the crew, Andreas's crew, hit me up, say, hey, I'm human.
I love it. The one last thing, strategies that you help implement and the assessment that you do.
Yeah.
Is there any part of that smaller startups or they're in their first couple of years or so can be able to utilize those tools? Is there any information?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we've been thinking about doing is adding on to the website sort of like some sort of an assessment tool that folks can use. We haven't quite done that yet, but it's in the works. But for sure, truth be told, if the book that I talked about, the PDF that I did, that's really a great tool to just begin to sort of tickle your mind, because the reality is, look, business owners are savvy and we're smart and we know what we're doing. It's just that sometimes we have blind spots, or I often say the fish doesn't always see the water. So in that book, I really do outline what are some, and it's a quick, easy read, but I outline the top 8 things, the real 8 core problems that I see are fundamental, and the reasons why. The book is called The 8 True Culprits That Are Causing Chaos in Your Business. I think that particular book really does allow for you to just read quick through and be like, oh, that's what it is. That right there is what's causing the problems. And once you identify them, obviously once you identify them, how to fix them, you might be able to sort of quickly say, okay, this is what's going on. I'll do a quick fix. If not, definitely you can reach out to us and, we'd be happy to have a conversation and say, yeah, that's the problem, but that quick fix isn't going to happen. Maybe consider doing this. But the point is, though, that book really does help you kind of open, sort of like, if you can't see the water, but it might be able to be like a light under there. It says that's the direction you need to be going into. So that would really be helpful. I think definitely.
I definitely appreciate it. Thank you for your time and, dropping all these fantastic jewels and this knowledge. And also being an advocate for small and medium-sized businesses or, of that caliber, because they need, services too, because
yes,
again, caught up in their own stuff.
Yes. And I always say, Andreas, just because I like to think of us like we're like the McKinsey for small and medium-sized companies, because the reality is, I think any small and medium-sized company can compete with the big dogs. I don't think it's because a company's larger doesn't mean that they can compete more than you in terms of providing service. And frankly, to be honest, small and medium-sized companies have the capacity to provide better service because they are able to they're able to have more touch, right? And they're able to pivot more. But if you are dealing with some chaos in the business, you can't even compete because you've got this pebble in the shoe and you keep walking on it. And no matter how much the shoe is custom made for you, if there's a pebble in it, you can't fix it. So the whole point what we evangelize is that, if you're running a business can sometimes feel like running trying to manage a crazy chaotic tornado. What we say is you can run your business smoothly. So we help owners really recognize they can run their business smoothly. It can thrive and they can thrive as well. Because even if you have a great business and you're all haggard and stuff like that, that don't make no sense either because you're not enjoying life. So,
ma'am, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Andreas.
I'll send you the reels and stuff when I create them. If you want to post them and things of that nature.
Yeah, for sure. We love to promote our talks. We usually spend a good week promoting, so we appreciate that.
I definitely look forward to a follow-up interview, seeing where you are, in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And definitely if I'm down in the Georgia area, I should, pick you up. Macon's north or south of Atlanta. I can't remember geography.
It's an hour and a half south of Atlanta.
South of Atlanta, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Most of the time I'm all over the state. I go all over the place and interview business owners and art. I actually started with artists.
You started what?
I started with artists.
Oh, really? Are you from the creative world?
Yes. So I understand them.
Yeah, no, totally. And Georgia has a great deal of artistic folks there.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has a lot of artistic folks there.
Mm-hmm. They do. So that's where I started, and I just transitioned, and now I still have artists that come on and things of that nature, especially ones who are really talented but don't necessarily get the look.
Yeah.
I come in, and that's why I started the platform. But thank you for your time, and I'm gonna let you get back to your schedule. I know you got a busy schedule, things of that nature. So you go out there, you keep being great.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Молодые братья, мы возьмем котлеты наличных себе на завтра. Сегодня, завтра, неважно как я. You, эй, yeah. Благослови моих братьев, благослови наши руки, мы в